G'day everyone, Dikko here with another kick-ass walkthrough. This is part 11 of a multi-part series that covers character rigging. And today we are going to hook up all those blend shapes we made in the last video and create some controls to derive them. We are also going to sort out the eye controls, so get those eyes moving left, right, whatever you need to do, and finalize the neck rig as well. So there's 3 parts to this thing, and it's all pretty straightforward. Anyway, let's jump right into it and start working out our controls for the blend shapes. All right, so let's get started. So all we need to do right now is just set up some control joints that will be used for driving the blend shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my 3D cursor to line up for now, just for now, with the eye. Somewhere on the eye that will control the blink. So I'm going to put it, I think I'll put it on the side for this rig because I've only got a blink for the whole eye, not for like up and down or like individual lids. So I want to have a global control just for the eyelid somewhere here. It could be here, it could be here, it could be here, it could be anywhere really. It is up to you as a designer or as a rigger to choose where you want to put it. So I'm just going to put it on the side. Yeah, pretty simple stuff. I'm going to make a new joint, Shift A, and scale that down. Using individual origins to control the scale, I'm just going to scale that down like so and rotate that to be on the side like that. Now, depending on what your orientations are, you may want to have a priority that the for most of your controls, the Z up axis could control most of the blend shapes, or if you want to have the X axis, you can do that. It's really up to you. In my case, I might just have it in positive Z for, you know, as I lift up the controller, the blink will be driven. So I'm going to actually rotate this roll on that like so. And in case you have forgotten where to visualize the orientation of your joints, you need to go to the armature settings here and turn on axes here, see? And you can actually choose in the new version of Blender where you put that axis as well, which is kind of cool. Anyway, yeah, so I'm just gonna set up where I want all my different controls to be, because for instance, depending on how many blend shapes you've made or how many shape keys you've made, you may need to have a certain set of controllers for everything that you've made. So, and you can even have a little board on the side if you want to have a separate control scheme on the side for controlling your face. So I need to have at least one for the eyebrows. So I'm going to duplicate this one and paste it over there. I'm going to need one for the corner of the mouth for the smile and frown. So I'm going to put one there. Put that there, like so. I'm going to need one for the cheekbone, so I'm going to put one here. I'll need one for the upper lip at the very least. I haven't done a lower lip sneer, but I have done an upper lip sneer, so I'm going to put another one there. And again, I can always snap it to the lip around there, like so. What else will I need? It really depends on how many blend shapes you have. So again, really dependent. So let's have a look. We may need to have one in the center of the face as well, just for like basic mouth, like global shapes. We'll see how we go with that one. I might bring that one forward a little bit, like so, just so it incorporates that part. All right, so we can go ahead and give these names. So let's have a look at the other blend shapes and see what we have. We have sneers, we have frowns. For the eyebrows, it might just be 2 controls, I think. So I might actually do another control that drives the inside of the eye. I might do that, just put it there for now. I don't know, because this might just control the up and down, and this might control the anger, the furrow, you know, those sort of things. So we can work with that. I think that will be it for now. But before we move on, I need to rename these. So I'm going to give it more a prefix of control. So let's just go to the bone settings here, and we're going to change it to change name or set name, and just put control underscore for now, and set it to new. Done. All right, save that for now. And now I'm going to have to make sure I name all this stuff appropriately. So in this case, it's going to be blink. Call this one eyebrow main, maybe. Or just call it eyebrow, and this one I'm going to call eyebrow inner. Call this one cheek. Call this one lip upper. Let's go lip upper. Just lip upper, I think, in this case. .l. Here's another thing I think to make sure I do. Make sure I have my left and rights turned on, because I plan on duplicating these after the fact. So let's just go ahead and give them left and right nomenclature as well. Lip corner for this one. And I'm just going to call this one lips for the middle. Or actually I might call it phenomes. Phenomes. And then because it's in the center, I don't need to worry about it being, you know, left or right. All right, cool. All we got to do now is select these left-sided controls, go to armature, go to symmetrize, and it will symmetrize those bones. Cool. And the nice thing is that because we duplicated all those joints, the orientations of all of these are exactly the same, which is great. All right, cool. So I'm just going to show you how to do one or two sets of blend shapes, and then you can kind of do the rest. I'm going to do a time lapse to complete the rest, because otherwise it would take ages to go through it all. All right, cool. So let's start off with the eye blink, because that one's the simplest one of all, because it's only driving one parameter, which is just the blink. So we only have to drive it to include only one, I guess, transform to you know, determine whether the blink turns off or on. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and do that. So to make this work, all we need to do is select our mesh that has the blend shapes or the shape keys on it. We're going to look for our blink, which is up at the top here. And in the value settings here, we're just going to give it a driver. So the value, I'm going to add a driver. And you know, there are ways to do this quicker, but I prefer to do it manually because that gives me more control. I know exactly what I'm doing. So what I want to do is once this control rises to a certain degree, in this case probably about 0.01, which is not that high, it will drive the blink. So what we need to do is we're going to open up the driver tab. And you'll see that here, the value for the blink already has a driver ready to go. So, but what we need to do is just give it a value. So in this case, it's going to be var. And we want it to be driven by this joint. So we're going to choose our object, which is the armature. We're going to choose our bone, which is the eye blink. So we're going to look up the blink. We're going to go for the left side for the first one. And we're going to have it according to Z location, because Z is what I want to drive that blink. So in this case, it's going to be the Z location in the positive under local space. All right, so I'm going to update those dependencies. And if we drive that, right now you can see it's taking a lot of effort to move that value up and down, because basically it's looking for a value of 1 to drive that. So what we need to do is go back to our blink and give it a multiplier. So in the expression, what we can do is multiply that expression by a factor of maybe 10 or 15 to get what we need. So I'm just going to guess right now and give it a value of 10. So when this thing lifts up to a value of 0.1, 1, you'll see it could be completely closed, right? So in our case, it's going to be a value of 100. There we go. So at 0.01, it will completely shut that blink. There we go. And this is completely dependent on the size of your rig in terms of scale and where you've placed your bones, what parameters you're going to be running. So it's completely dependent on your particular model and your particular rig, what value you're going to be using. So there may be a element of trial and error to drive your blend shapes, depending on your rig setup. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. And we can do the same thing with the right side. But the cool thing now is because the values will be exactly the same, what we can do is copy that driver, save the file first, paste it in there, right? And obviously right now, because it's a duplicated driver, it's going to be driven by the same control, right? But all you got to do in that driver is change the control bone from left to right, update those dependencies, and before you know it, left side is working. Oh shit, wrong one. I did the wrong driver. You can see that it's working at least, but just with the wrong eye. So make sure you select the right driver. So that one's the left. This one, blink R, is going to be right. So again, just be careful what you're doing here. Update those dependencies. And before you know it, left and right are working as you'd expect. Great. Now you might be wondering, sometimes you don't want to have the controller overextending here. So what we need to do is add some limitations on those controls. And this is the only instance where I'd say where you would add a constraint onto a control joint. And that would be a limit transforms, a limit location constraint. There's also, I think that's the right one. Yeah, a limit location. So what you'd do is you first lock off everything that you're not going to be using. In this case, everything except the Z control, like so. Same with this one, limit location. And what you can do is have a minimum of 0 in the transforms, and then a maximum on the Z, and make sure it's set to local space, by the way, a maximum of 0.01 in the case of this control, that because I've specifically made sure that once it reaches 1.01, it finishes that blink. The other thing you need to do is turn on effect transform so it doesn't overextend the value, even though you're still pulling the value. If that's turned on, the value can still be extended across, which is really pain in the ass because you might end up having keyframes in a value that doesn't work. So make sure effect transform's turned on. There we go. Same thing here. Effect transform, make sure it's set to local space. And there we go. Cool. And that's how you get the blend shapes to drive. Now, there may be instances where you need to create blend shapes that affect controls that affect multiple blend shapes. Now, let's do this with the instance of the corner of the lip here. Okay, so I want this lip control to drive a smile and a frown. So we need to have a driver that effectively influences 2 blend shapes, right? So that's pretty simple. And you'll know it's simple when you understand which orientation you're going to be driving that blend shape. So in this case, positive Z is going to drive the smile, negative Z is going to drive the frown. Pretty simple, right? So for instance, let's add a smile. So what we can do, we're going to add a driver to both the smile and the frown. Okay. With the left one, let's click on the smile. We're going to choose the same. We're going to choose our armature. We're going to choose lip corner. So look up corner, lip corner.L in my case. I'm going to make it the driver be Z location again, local space with a variance of just var. So the name var is what you'll use in the expression to drive. So basically, if you look at my previous videos on drivers, you'll understand this. But basically, every attribute has a label, and that expression requires that label to run. All right, so let's see how it works. And you can see here, it's doing the same thing as before. So we need to actually multiply this again. So just like before, with that smile, we need to give it a multiplication of 100. Update those dependencies, and you'll see that at 0.01 on the transforms of this control, we're getting our smile, which is just what we want. All right. Let's see how it's being affected here. Now you may be wondering why I have a value of 1.5. And the reason is that the cool thing with Blender's blend shapes is that you can actually extend your blend shape to actually interpolate the blend even beyond what you've already sculpted for that shape. So you can actually give it a higher value. So you can actually make it a maximum of 1.5, and it will really drive that shape in a really sometimes in really weird ways. It will actually break the blend shape, but if you want to really exaggerate those shapes without having to resculpt, you can do that with Blender, which is really cool. I'm going to bring it back down to a max of 1 just to make it clean for you guys to understand. But you'll see here that now we have the smile working in the positive. Now if we bring it down to the negative, we need to make that frown work. And that's really simple. So all we need to do is that with this smile, we're going to actually copy this driver, paste it into the frown, right? And then go to the frown value here. Now, the only difference with this expression is that we need to give it a negative result. So basically the value will end up meaning that you can see here the value at the moment is equaling a negative value. So what we need to do is multiply that with a negative value. And there we have it. The reason is just simple maths, negative plus a negative, negative times a negative equals a positive. And because we need a positive value in the frown value, we need to multiply that with a negative value. So now we have smile and frown being driven by a single controller. And just like before, we can lock off all those controls like so. Go to the constraints for limit transforms. Just like before, effect transform, local space. But in this case, we want to have a minimum of 0.01 and a maximum of 0.01. Like so. So now the control can only be manipulated within those parameters. Nice and simple. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these. And again, it really just depends on how many blend shapes you have, what control schemes you want to do, what orientations you're working with. It's really up to you and the way you want to build your rig. So you may have different requirements, and this is not the only way to build out the facial rig control setup. So again, work with what you got, be logical, and think about how you set up your controls in the perspective of an animator animating this thing. So again, it's completely up to you how you go about this. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do this myself, and yeah, I'll see you soon. All right, so now that that's done, let's have a quick little testy test. And you can see here that the lips are doing their thing. Cheeks, I just got simple up and down. Obviously the blinks are working. And you can see here that with the frown lines, I've got 2 blend shapes being driven here. Turns out I did actually have some sneers for the bottom lip, so I added those as well. Got the smiles working. And with the phenomes, I've got blend shapes being driven by, in the Y, or in the Z, sorry. In the Y as well. So if I want to have a pucker, I pull it out. And if I want to have it go into like an M shape, I push it in. And if I want to have a B shape, I'm going to push it to the side. And if I'm going to have an O shape, it will go to the left. So if I open up, say, the jawline and have it go, oh my god, you can see here, it can control the inside of that width of that shape. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. So now all we got to do is create the control shapes, and you're done with the blend shapes being driven by the rig. The only thing I need to do now is just make sure that all these controls are a child of the head joint. So just select all those joints, go into edit mode, control, make parent, control P, make parent, keep offset, and now at least those joints will be driven, carry along with the head. So that's all good. After that, it's really about building out those control shapes to make sure they're readable. So I'm going to go ahead and make some control shapes for that now, and then we'll jump into getting the eyes to move along with the face and get that neck control working. All right, so here we are. Controls are pretty simple. I just chose a shape that sort of gave an indication of which direction the controls go. So if they only have if they have an up and down motion, I have 2 arrows. If I have only an up motion, I have the arrow going this way. And as you can see, it's the same throughout the entire thing. Like so. So yeah, from now on, it's just about now creating the controls for the eyes and getting that neck up and running. All right, so let's get these eyes working. So you see here that the eye itself is of I guess you can say a spherical design. So when I say aspherical, I mean non-spherical. It's kind of like a naturalistic shape, right? So what we need to do is figure out how to properly set up this pivot point to work for the eyes to rotate accordingly. So what we can do is put the cursor to the selection of that center there. And we're going to create a sphere, like a regular sphere. Actually, let's go with the round cube. Let's go with the sphere, because not everyone has that plugin turned on. Let's go with a sphere, a UV sphere. We're going to rotate that around and just scale that into place. And just double check to see that what we do will match. Because what we can see is that the eyeball itself is protruding from a point that isn't, like, I guess, in line with the rest of things. So what you can almost do is possibly set this up to be a little bit more centered, I guess I can say. Like so. Kind of. So that at least when we rotate the eye, it's not going to like stick through the eyelid. So what we can do there is just going to scale that accordingly. I'm going to set the 3D cursor to that area and just delete that sphere again. And from where that point is from now on, I'm going to set my bone to be at that location. Okay, if you had a perfectly spherical eye, you won't have to worry about this because that center should be at the center of the sphere. But for our purposes, for this point, we'll need to worry about it like that. So again, what I'm going to do now is go into edit mode and create a new bone at that point. Rotate that down from the point of origin, individual origins. My bad. And then we're going to scale that down like so. And again, if you want to keep things consistent, it doesn't really matter so much at this point with this setup of doing the eye, but you could always set the roll to be in line with the world space. All right, let's call this DEF eye because it will deform. It's going to inform the deformation. .L. And we're going to duplicate that forward like so. And call this one control I.L.001. This one will be a non-deforming joint. And while we're at it, we're going to make sure that all of our controls for the blend shapes are also non-deforming because we don't want them to influence the face in that way. So we're going to make sure that these are all non-deforming joints as well. All right, turn those off. Boom. All right, cool. Now with these ones, we can now duplicate those. We're going to mirror those. So we're going to symmetrize those like so. Perfect. And that's all we need for the setup there, except for one extra bone between these joints here. So these two bones here, I'm going to add a cursor to selected there. I'm going to duplicate one of these. And we don't need to have left and right for this one. This is just going to be the control master. So we're just going to call this control I for one of those. And you're just going to delete the one that we duplicated because mirroring was turned on. And make sure this is set completely in the center. So on their head and tail on the x-axis, make sure they're set to 0. These two controls will be a child of that master control. All right. And then this control will be a child of the head. So make sure that's the control like so. Same goes with these joints here. So the eye joints, the eye controls will be a child of that head bone as well. So these will all move with the head. Like so. Or if you wanted to, you can make this eye control a child of the center of gravity, depending on how you want to set it up. If you want the eyes to sort of say like follow independently, then you can make that eye master a child of the COG instead. That way when the head turns, the eyes will still kind of look toward this control independently. All right, cool. Next thing we need to do is obviously skin the eyes to these controls. So we're going to just quickly do a, actually I'm going to, let's do a quick skin with automatic weights onto those eyes. And let's just test this out. Let's turn on the wireframe mode. And just test out these to make sure it's working. And you can see here the eyes are now moving perfectly within the eye socket. Now that we set up that center of origin on that eyeball. That's looking pretty good to me. This one's looking pretty good to me as well. That's great. And now what we can do to make this work with this control here, because right now we want this set up here to control the direction of these eyes. And this is pretty simple. Just select this control here, select this one here, go to, I'm going to set it to be a damp track, or you can go with an IK, it doesn't really matter. In this case, let's just go with a damped track, with that one there, damped track with that one there. So now this control, see how it's now controlling the eye? Perfect. Great. And now this control is controlling the eye like so. And if we move the eyes inwards, nothing's going to happen, but we can move the eyes up and down. It'll all work in tandem, just as you'd expect. That's all you need for the eye control. That's all done. Now, what we can do here is just make up some basic control shapes, and the eyes are finished. So let's go ahead and do that right now. All right, so here we are. We got our control set up now. So we've got some nice shapes, and you can go with any shape you want, honestly. It doesn't really matter. And you can see the eyes are moving just as you expect it to, which is perfect for what we need. This eye is working that way. If we turn off the, let's turn off the joints for now. Oh wait, we can't hide the armature. Let's hide the these controls. Let's move into another layer, just for now. And you can see that it's all working exactly to plan. So there we go. Just like what you'd expect. Cool. Now, if you wanted to have fleshy eyelids and stuff like that, you could skin a little bit of influence onto the eyelids themselves. And we'll talk about that in the next video. But otherwise, the head itself, the face rig, is done. So the only thing left to add is really a little bit more control onto the neck. So what we have at the moment is we have the head control working pretty good, but we haven't got our neck control working yet. So what we can do is turn on the deform joints, and then we're going to duplicate the neck joint and then create our control setup for that. All right, so to get this neck up and running, we're going to firstly just duplicate the neck. Duplicate the neck. And we're going to rename this as control neck.001. There we go, cool. Don't worry about the relationship, it's going to be exactly the same as the other neck, but in this case, we're just going to drive the control of the deformed joint with this control. So what we're going to do is firstly, make sure we can have a nice, let's unhide everything. A nice controller for that. So let's just go to our widgets and just see if we have anything that can work already. We have quite a lot of messy stuff here, but let's just run with it and see what we can find. So make sure we have the right thing connected. We're going to choose non-deform for that neck first as well. And let's go to that custom object and just choose one of these. And that looks fine. Widget FK works perfectly fine for that. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit. I do find that the location is a little bit in the wrong section. So what I want to do is I might duplicate that control widget FK, duplicate that. And with the newer version of Blender, this won't be an issue. We won't have to do this anymore, but for this version, we still have to. We're going to choose this new copied version and just rise that into place like so. So at least then the position of that neck will be in the right spot. Something like that. There we go. Cool. Let's hide those widgets again. And now this control, we're going to just constrain copy transforms. Because now this control can now at least control the rest of the head. So that's working well. But I want to do one more thing to make this completely usable, is have an isolate rotation on the head itself. So when the neck moves, there are instances where you want to keep the head in its upright direction without being influenced by the neck rotation. So what we're going to do is something similar to what we did with the shoulders and the arms for the FK in the previous tutorials. So what I'm going to do is go into edit mode here, and I'm going to duplicate the head control for now and scale that down. I'm going to rename this as MCH head parent. And I'm going to duplicate that once more. scale that down as well. I'm going to call this one MCH head ISO rot .001. And just like before, let's make sure that those are non-deforming joints. Let's make sure the control head is also non-deforming. That is also non-deforming. That's good. Make sure it's non-deforming as well. So for the head parent, you can't really see that there's a controller here, but we have to firstly let's remove those visual controls. Let's just get rid of the custom objects on those. Cool. So what we need to do is we're going to do exactly the same thing as what we did with the shoulders. So we're going to have the arm parent a child of the global control. So the arm parent will be this, the head parent will be this one. This will be a child of the COG. Like so. Now this one will remain a child of the neck. All right, cool. So with the head parent, what we're going to do is copy the location of the neck. Under the DEF, and make sure it's on the tail in this case of that neck joint. That's fine. After that, we're going to grab a constraint that will constrain the rotation to that head ISO rot. Okay, so we're going to make a new copy rotation, set it to the armature, and neck, in this case it's going to be, head ISO rot. We're going to have it a child of that. Now, for the control head, that control head will now be a child of that head ISO rot. Okay. Select the head. So we're going to hide these ones. Select the head. Select the head ISO rot and make it a child of that. So now it all makes sense in a moment, but you can see here that head ISO rot is now controlling the head. And then we have the controller itself doing its thing. All right. But here we have the head moving the entire thing. Actually, this should be a child of the, sorry to confuse you guys. The head control should be a child of the head parent. My bad. All right, and you will see why. Because if we move the neck now, and the neck is a parent of the head ISO rotation, you can see here, right? And if we turn off the copy rotation on the head parent, the neck can move forward and backward, but the head can sort of lunge forward and back as well. So just like that arm control, we have that same sort of isolate rotation option in the head. So just to reiterate, the control head is a child of the head parent mechanic joint. The mechanic joint is a child of the COG. In order to keep this bone in place, we have placed a copy location at the base of the neck on that control, okay? Then the rotation will be driven by this bone here, the MCH head ISO rot, which is a child of the neck, okay? And then if we turn on the head ISO rot constraint, so that this bone is now constrained to this bone, it will follow through. The only thing left to do is very similar to this one, is create a driver. So that driver is basically going to be exactly the same as this driver here on the arm for the FK. So I'm going to actually copy that. and paste it onto this one. The only difference now is that we need to create a custom property on the head and replace that data path. So what we're going to do, custom property, we're going to edit this one and call it head ISO rotation. We're going to have a min max of 0 and 1. It'll make it library overridable. Turn that on, push OK. I'm going to copy this data path. And in that constraint here, under this driver, I'm going to just replace that influence. So here, replace it with that new custom property, update dependencies, and now head ISO rotation is now being driven by that. So basically now we have finished the rig. There's only one last thing to do, and that we forgot to do, and that was to create some controllers for the shoulders. So we can do that really easily. All I'm going to do is open up the widgets again, and I'm going to duplicate those shoulder controls, joints, and I'm going to rename that as control shoulder L01. Same with this one here. I'm going to rename this one as control shoulder 01. Again, make sure they're non-deforming. Cool. And just like before, I'm just going to give them a shape. Just going to use that FK widget. Great. That one's going to work fine. Widget. FK. Great. That's fine. And I might scale those down a little bit. And you can give, if we wanted to give it a more custom shape, we could, but I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Just like so. Boom. And just like before, we're just going to copy transforms on those controllers. So now these will still move as you'd expect. Great. This is all moving as you'd expect. Awesome. We have a neck control. And then we have our head control. And just like the neck, we can move the neck forward. And then we can turn on the ISO rotation so it follows with the neck completely as well. All right, cool. And that's the entire rig is finished. The only thing left to do now is basically clean up everything, make sure all our layers are in place, and then do all the weight painting. So let's have a look. All in one piece. So firstly, let's just make sure that all our controls are at least, in some area that, isn't part of the deformed joint. So let's just get all these controls that we just made today and move them into somewhere safe. Let's just make sure that we've selected everything. All right, let's hide that wireframe because we don't want all these control joints to be in the deform group, you know what I mean? So let's just make sure we organize everything cleanly. Okay, let's move those into place. There we go. So now we can hide all these deform stuff in a place that's, we know that they're all just deformed joints. There we go. Hide all that crap. So there we have it. Let's have a look. We have our shoulders working. Yay. This is working. Awesome. We have our twist controls in our upper arm. We've got our IK working. That's great. IK working. Obviously, there's some weight painting issues there. We don't have a thumb, so we're gonna have to see what's going on there. non-deforming. There we go. And this is why it's good to test and make sure everything's working. There we go. That's working fine now. We've got our body working. Awesome. Sorry, there we go. FK is working in the spine. Hips are working. Obviously, none of the clothing has been weighted yet, so we have to fix that up in the next video. Legs are working. Legs are working. Feet are working. Fantastic. So it's all in one piece. How cool is that? And yeah. And of course the facial rig is working as well. So we got all that doing its thing. Cool. Okay. So the only thing left to do now is do all the weight painting. So until then, I'm gonna wrap this up and let you guys catch up to this video. And until then, catches and have fun. Cheers.